Good afternoon, Chairman. You're on mute, Rob.
Good afternoon and welcome to the virtual meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board. My name is Robert Parker, Councillor Robert Parker, and I'm the Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board. Welcome to all members and officers in attendance today. The audio feed of this meeting is being broadcast by the County Council's website. We would also like to welcome any members of the press and public who are listening to our meeting online today. Anyone invited to speak during today's meeting should unmute their microphone, switch on their camera. Please turn off your camera and microphone when not participating. If you do wish to speak, please use the chat function and type "speak" as a comment. All officers and members are welcome to use the chat function, and requests to speak will be collated by the Vice Chair, Councillor Ray Wotton. The Head of Democratic Services will indicate in the chat when a new item has begun. If you do experience any IT issues during the meeting, please end the call using the red phone icon and rejoin the meeting using the link previously provided. If you do experience connectivity issues while speaking, please turn off your camera, as this may help. If you do continue to experience IT issues, please contact Simon Firth, our IT engineer, for assistance. Can I also ask, finally, that members who are intending to leave the meeting, who are returning to the meeting, should indicate using the chat function. Officers don't need to do that. Okay, can we move to the order of proceedings now? Can I start by asking Emily Wilcox, Democratic Services Officer, to confirm the presence of all members and officers in attendance at the meeting? Emily.
Thank you, Chairman. If members could please indicate what they are present when the name is called. Councillor Ray Wotton, Vice Chairman.
Present.
Councillor Jackie Brockway.
Present.
Councillor Rob Kendrick.
Present.
Councillor Stephen Kirk.
Present.
Councillor Angela Newton.
Present.
Councillor Nigel Pepper.
Present.
Councillor Eddie Strengle.
Present.
Mrs Megan Machin, Parent Governor Representative.
Present.
Councillor Martin Hill.
Present.
Councillor Richard Davis.
I think he sent his apologies, I think.
Present.
Oh, he is.
No, I'm present.
Councillor Hugo Marfleet, spokesperson for the call-in.
Present.
And we also have the following officers in attendance at the meeting today: Debbie Barnes, Chief Executive; Andy Gutherson, Executive Director, Place; Graham Butler, Lincolnshire Road Safety Partnership; Sam Edwards, Head of Highways Infrastructure; Tracy Johnson, Senior Scrutiny Officer; Paul Little, Head of Highways Asset Management; and Nigel West, Head of Democratic Services and Statutory Scrutiny Officer.
Thank you, Emily. Has anyone who is attending today not had their name called out by Emily? Okay, can we then move to the agenda? There are 3 items for consideration and discussion. Item 1, apologies for absence. Emily, do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Macy, Councillor Bowkett, Councillor Marfleet, who is attending as a spokesperson for the call-in rather than a member of the board, and Alex Sayer, Parent Governor Representative. We also have Councillor Steve Kirk in attendance as a substitute for Councillor Hugo Marfleet for this meeting only.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of councillors' interests. If any member would like to declare an interest in this item, can you please indicate in the chat room now by typing "speak." Councillor Wotton, as monitor of the chat room, do we have any members who would like to declare an interest?
Chairman, none.
Thank you. Item 3 is the main item on the agenda today, which is the call-in of a decision by the Leader of the Council, Councillor Martin Hill, on the A631 Market Race into Louth, Safety Road Primary. This item invites the board to consider a call-in of a decision by Councillor Hill from the A631 Market Race into Louth Safer Road Primary Road Network. The decision has been called in by Councillors Hugo Marfleet, Tony Bridges and Dan McNally. Councillor Hugo Marfleet, as we know, is attending today, spokesperson for the call. There is a different procedure for call-ins, which has been included in the agenda pack on page 5, the public papers, which we'll be following today. If you would like to ask a question as a member of the committee under step 3, could you please type speak in the chat room and the Councillor Wotton will monitor this. I could just go through the process very briefly. Step 1 is the first step is to hear from the spokesperson for the call-in, and I would like to begin by inviting Councillor Hugo Marfleet, spokesperson for those calling in the decision, to outline the reasons for the call-in or ready information. Come back to just in a moment. Step 2 would be to look at the procedure, including Councillor Martin Hill, to address the reasons for the call-in. And steps 3 and 4 move into inviting members of the board and Councillor Marfleet questions. So, back to you, Councillor Marfleet. Would you like to add to and talk about your reasons for the call?
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon to you all. The reason really for the call-in, it's in effect the principles of putting the cart before the horse. I welcome the fact that this road is being looked at from a safety point of view. I welcome any road that has any repair works because it's all beneficial and it's a thorn in our side, the pressures of funding such a rural network. But my main thing with this road is primarily the safety. And the safety of the road has what we call a couple of hot spots along the way. So we're talking about the A631 from Market Raisin to Louth. When you leave Market Raisin first off, you go past the racecourse and you've got a relatively long straight road through Willingham Woods. Now, Willingham Woods is, and actually if you go into one of the appendix, it does have a map. And the sort of stretch along from Willingham Woods is perhaps a bit of a, has got a few marks of accidents along the way. It is a huge motorcycle pit stop where they come out for a ride out on a Wednesday night and they come in their hundreds. And of course, you've also got the other part of the woods, which is the recreational part. So, but the road is clear. Road Safety Partnership does police that bit. How good they are with a camera forward, with a motorbike going without a number plate on the front, I don't know. But and then you come up the hill from there, and about a mile out, or maybe a mile and a half too, you come to the next black spot, which is in effect the crossroads between the B1225, known as the Caister High Street, which crosses the A631. So the B road has to give way to the A road. The real issue here is turning left coming off the Caister High Street, which is a very much a fuel tanker road. A lot of freight goes down that road. It does connect through from Immingham and the Humber Bank across towards the A16 rather. And so there is a lot of traffic that does use the B1225 Caister High Street. The problem is when you come round off the road coming from Market Raisin to Louth, you basically come round and there's a house right on the corner, and you come round and I even drove it last night, 50 miles an hour coming into that bend. If somebody's turning right to go to Market Raisin off the B1225 and somebody comes round that corner too quick, it is dangerous. There is no doubt about it. It's a very dangerous stretch turning right. And this has always been the issue spot. The parish council of Ludford wants this being looked at, and so we welcome it when it gets on the list. The problem is with this, why I've called it in is because it's all about doing up 3.7 or 3.7 kilometres of carriageway as a primary. Well, because the carriageway is failing in a place or two and needs the money spending. I'm all for it. I could perhaps question the safety element of that, because in some sense, yes, I agree, resurfacing the road will make it safer. Using non-slip surface will make it safer. You could also say that in theory, you have routine maintenance with carriageways, and this could fall what I would deem, in some sense, in routine maintenance. But if we can get some funding and it contributes to it, all well and good. The funding from this whole scheme is from predominantly most of the scheme, because there is a little bit which comes from another part from the coastal highways. But predominantly, the scheme is from the government's Safer Roads Fund programme. And my take on that is to look at the safety incidents that are happening on this road. Why and how are we going to address the road safety? What the call-in has, what the sort of the decision was that you do the road first, and in the bottom, when you go through that document, which was paragraph or keynote 1.7, where suddenly it just then talks about the road safety measures we're going to put in, reduce 50 mile an hour and put average speed cameras. And it was left as though that's going to be the whole way from Market Raising to Louth. And I'm like, well, hold on. First off, we've had no discussion. Nobody that I've spoken to a lot of people on how to solve and what's the issue. No one has even wants that. The road itself, other than these two areas, is a good travelling road. It does take agricultural traffic and caravans. There are 3 good places where it's very open, clear and straight to overtake on. And a 50 mile an hour through there would be nonsense. But however, when you now go back to the documents now, what's come out for this meeting is it does talk about 50 miles an hour average speed from Market Raising to Ludford. So in effect, the game has already changed. There is funding, as I said, from various parts. But my main thing is if we triggered yes and went with yes and agreed with the decision, in effect, with doing up the carriage repairs became the lead. And the lead is actually about making what I call the black spots better, not general carriageway repairs, which is why I've called it in. And in effect, and the misleading part was that in there, it then said, we're just going to make the whole road 50 miles an hour. One little sentence. And I'm like, but that should be the primary thing. That's what should be sorted out. That's what people, if we're going to go to consultation, that's what people want to know. And we haven't gone to consultation. There was a meeting, and it does talk about it on page 20 on the new documents. I can't say I spoke to Lewis on several times. Well, I always speak to Lewis, or did. And unfortunately, it says that Lewis agreed with the proposal. That I couldn't tell you. Lewis never said anything to me about that or not. But as for me, I wouldn't have quite said it was quite like that. We did have a discussion. We accept that there needs to be speed reductions at points. And I'm like, but it's like I said, the junction wants looking at. The signage is terrible. When I talk about the signage, half of the signage coming up the hill from Market Raisin is actually buried in the hedge. The signs of travel and destination have been hanging off for a year. In fact, 3/4 is gone and one little bit's left there. And it's overgrown. There's so much that can be done with that one spot to address the safety issues, and maybe other little bits like Willingham Woods and a couple of other junctions further along. They don't need this whole speed, just no one wants that. If we don't watch it, that will force all the locals to start using back roads through other villages where they're not under pressure, which are really single lanes. So if we're not careful here, we're going to force, with the sort of 50 mile an hour all the way from Raisin to Louth, traffic in different directions, cause chaos, and not necessarily address the issue. Because at 50 miles an hour, going round that bend into that junction from Raisin to Louth, and I did it last night and I set my speed, you would still be too fast if anything that was towing anything or anything that turned right back to Market Raisin. There is no time. You are looking in that particular zone, either if you wanted the Rolls-Royce option, you would go for a roundabout. If you went for a slim down option, you would do some realignment. And if you went for really what it really needs is better awareness, some hedging dropping down, better signage, slow the speed down, even if it's 40, and run it through. I mean, you can come out of Ludford, hit 60 miles an hour for 100 metres and drop down into that, well, that road is still 60 through there. And I've done it. I did it last night. And actually, I put it on cruise control and I was turning right. There's no need to get back up to 60. It's so on you, that junction. So the whole junction wants blending into the speed zone of Ludford. And somehow, you know what, I'm not here to design the highway, but I'm just here to, in effect, bring about what I think is the priority. Let's look at the black spots. Let's individually address those. And when they're resolved, let's do the carriageway up and fund it. And we know what we're getting for our money. We know that we are then committed to the government scheme. We meet the criteria and we get funding. And actually at the bottom of the scheme, it does say, but it doesn't say on there that we have to go average speed cameras. I think you could do an average speed camera through that. I'm not disagreeing with that. But the whole idea is, it's certainly where I know that a lot of people have spoken about, we do not want mass speed reduction all the way through that whole area. It is a good road, because actually the issue is about two black spots which need focus and control first. And let's design what I call the safety first, and then get on and do the carriageway works up. And that was the reason for calling. It's quite simply, the cart has been put before the horse, and the horse being the black spots and the cart being the carriageway repair, which, as I said before, deemed as general maintenance. But I agree, with a non-slip surface, it will make things better.
Thank you, Councillor Marfleet. Thanks, Hugo.
Thank you.
Okay, step two. Can I move to the procedure laid out by step two and invite Councillor Martin Hill, who was the decision maker, to address the reasons for the call-in?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much, Chairman. So obviously I am the decision maker for this, but as Councillor Davies, who is the portfolio holder for highways, is also present, as indeed is Paul Little, highways officer. So I'll just summarise my view on this, and if they wish to come in after me to clarify anything, I hope you would allow them to do that. So the recommendation is pretty straightforward, in that it states that I approve the award of the main contract for this particular road and the resurfacing scheme. It just mentions in the recommendation about the resurfacing scheme. So I think in terms of what's actually on the recommendation, that's pretty straightforward. And I think Councillor Marfleet has made it pretty clear that in terms of the 1.7 million proposed spend on resurfacing of the, I think it's nearly 4 kilometres of road, including proposed skid surfaces, etc. I think he's indicated that he has no issue with that part of the recommendation, or indeed the recommendation. So I won't talk at any length about what is being proposed. I would thank Councillor Marfleet, though, because there is I think he is right to highlight some confusion, because within the report, and he talks about paragraph 1.7, and further on in the report, it talks about various road safety measures. There is a lot of words about that. And I suppose where he would be coming from is, although this is just on the face of it a road improvement scheme in terms of physical resurfacing and all the rest of it, there is an implication in there that by implication, because it's in the report, all these other road safety stuff will be happening. And I think he's also correct to say that there has been no consultation on that in terms of speed reduction measures, which, as we all know, normally goes through a quite extensive consultation process, both without and within the council. I think the other thing to state is the funding of this, of course, is £1.7 million. £1 million of the funding is coming from the National Road Safety Fund, or whatever they call it. So there is an element of there, and by implication, obviously, I'm assuming the government would actually be expecting to, if we apply to this fund, that there was at least some measures in there which would help with road safety. I've asked Paul Little, who is present here, I think the key thing is here, if this is agreed by the council, does that automatically commit the council to doing any road safety, or in particular the road safety proposals which have been outlined in the report? And he has sent me an email, and I'll let him speak for himself, that basically, no, there is no obligation. But of course, if we don't do any safety measures on that particular stretch of road, we'll have to give a reason. And it's probably fair to say that some eyebrows might be raised, and it might be even fair to say that it possibly could jeopardise future funding for road safety. But the bottom line is, I could agree this, and we could still not do, or the council could not do, any road safety measures. So I think for me, where we get to, therefore, is that, and I'm personally willing to amend or change the recommendations, that we do the road, the physical work, but at the same time, then give time for a proper consultation on what sort of road safety measures are people would support along that stretch of road. And that can be done later, because we do need to get on with that scheme. So I think this is it is eminently sortable, but I do think it does remind us that when we do changes like this, we should do the consultation first. And I know we've had coronavirus, which has made a difficulty, but it is resolvable. So if the recommendation wasn't accepted, I could change it, or we could just resolve today. I'll have to ask advice from Nigel, that we accept the recommendation on the basis that there will be a consultation and no decision has been made on the road safety side of it. So that's all I've got to say. And I don't know whether Councillor Davies or Paul Little wants to add anything.
Okay, Councillor Davies first.
Thank you. I think the thing I would add is that this road wasn't picked at random in terms of its accident record, and it was the Department for Transport which has highlighted it as potentially one of the most dangerous roads in England, and which is why this money was made available for it. I think if the message we send back at this stage is that we don't want the money for road safety improvements because we don't agree it's that dangerous and we think we know better, I think it's a dangerous, but it may be the right step, but a bold one nonetheless. I agree that there is a lot of concern about speed limits, and nobody at times is more concerned about them than myself. But I have to say, the Road Safety Partnership have looked at the efficacy of these stretches of 50-mile-an-hour speed limits over the last 10 years. There have been a number of put into place across the county, and the results are undeniable. they reduce accident rates tremendously, and they're extremely effective in places such as this, where you don't have particular accident black spots. Despite anecdotal view, the accident spread is across the piece, across the stretch. And I think that makes this an ideal location. And we've seen it at the A52 at Ropsley, for example, where average speed cameras, and members in the south of the county will know the area well, has taken it from being an extremely dangerous stretch of road to a very normal, safe stretch of road, simply because it's managed to influence driver behaviour. Just for some clarity, I obviously, when we put the bid in, I think it was 2.5 years ago now for this, there was a great deal of information publicised through the media, through our usual channels on the bid. And I did a number of site visits with both the late Councillor Lewis Strange, his parish councils along this stretch, and also Tony Turner, who has an interest in this stretch. And they were both extremely keen to see the speed of passing vehicles reduced. So I could feed that in, but obviously they're not able to comment on that. And certainly it's been a pressing issue along this stretch of road for a long time. No solution is perfect, but I think this is as pretty close as we're going to get in the short term, at least.
Thank you for that, Councillor Davies. Paul Little, would you like to add anything to the views expressed by Councillors Hill and Davies?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just had a few comments, really. I think the first one to be cognizant of is the actual Safer Roads Fund, and I think, as been previously mentioned, the Safer Roads Fund is a DFT initiative, and the A631 was analysed as one of the 50 most dangerous roads, not just in the county, but in the country. So what the DFT have done is issued additional funding, and I think the key thing there is that it is additional funding. It's not there to replace our existing road safety funding. But the proviso on that, or the sort of driver behind that, was that the Safer Roads Fund is based on what they call the Safer Roads Initiative, and that's based on looking at stretches of roads or routes rather than the traditional method of looking at what we would call collision hotspots. So the whole route, and included in the report, is the actual collision map that was used to get that evidence. So this money is extra, and the measures that are prescribed there are what are called engineering measures. So the measures from research produce noticeable reductions in accident rates on roads right across Europe. So this is an additional fund, and the measures there are designed to make a road a safe road, as it says in the title. Our additional funding goes into that. Our original funding for road safety does look at collision hotspots. So that work's still ongoing at the current time. But currently on our system, the junction of the A631 with the Caister High Street sits at number 48 within our system. So that means that unless we can't do anything on the previous 47, that's the current priority system. The second point I would make is, it would appear that we've not consulted fully with Councillor Marfleet, although we did meet with Councillor Marfleet, but it doesn't seem that we've got the full understanding of the safer roads there. So there's obviously lessons to learn there in terms of what we've done with the safer roads work that we've done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. We now move on to involve members of the board and Councillor Marfleet as the spokesperson to ask any questions to Councillor Hill and Davies and Paul. So can members who wish to speak in putting forward questions indicate in the chat room so that Councillor Wotton can indicate who is to speak first. So if we just give a pause, if you want to ask questions, can you use the chat room to indicate so?
Chairman, the first speaker I have is Councillor Jackie Brockway.
Fine. Question.
Okay,
You,
thank
Jackie.
you. Thank you very much, Chairman. I've got a series of part questions. What I'm finding with this is that I seem to be short of full information. I would absolutely support the scheme to, obviously nobody's going to go against a scheme that puts safety in place, but I am concerned when the local member feels that perhaps we should have made a more holistic approach. So I have a couple of questions. For instance, we're saying that this is...
Can I just interrupt and say, because there's three people who could answer the question, would you give an indication? So that
yes, I will, but I'm afraid it is for different people. So what I need to know is with the this sits at number 48. 48 out of how many? So I would guess that's for Paul. My other question would be, we clearly haven't consulted yet about the reduction of the speed limit. And the report says that basically, if there are objections, they go through the planning system. But where do we sit as far as the money is concerned if a lot of people object to the reduction in speed? So that would be for Richard or Martin. Could I just leave it there for a minute, please?
Right, I'll start on that. I think the issue is, and I just remind members, the actual recommendation just refers to the physical resurfacing of the road. And I just come back to the point that, so it does mean that this recommendation could go through, but I think where the issue lies is, and bearing in mind that the money won't be withdrawn if nothing happens in terms of road safety. So there is therefore time to get on with the physical works, but also then time to start a proper process, because I don't think the proper process, because normally we start off with proposals which go to the scrutiny committee, then it goes through into all the rigmarole and all the rest of it. So there is time to do that. And all I would say is that my advice would be, we have to do some strong advice is we really should do some road safety issues along that stretch of road to justify receiving the money. Whether it's the particular proposals which are being outlined or not is a matter the council can take some leisure over, shall we say, in terms of coming up with something which both will reassure the government the money has been spent for what it was meant to be spent on, but also reassure all of you that there has been adequate consultation. For example, Councillor Davies mentioned the ROPSI A52. That is true. The average speed cameras there have done a really good job, but it's still 60 miles an hour, whereas this proposal is 50. So all those sorts of things can be gone through, and as long as we came out of it with some road safety measures, it would be, I think that would be a good result. So that's where I sort of sit on this.
May I just clarify something, Chairman?
Could I just say that I think that there is an issue here between the substantive issue of the call-in and what may dominate the conversation, which is Part B. Okay, now I think that we may have to accept a lot on trust about what's going to happen outside of the direct reason for the call-in, because it's not for me to make a judgment in advance, but it would seem as though there is a likelihood that the scheme will be supported, but I think we've got a lot of concerns about Part B, which we may not be able to deal with today. Is that okay, Jackie?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Chairman. If these assurances are in place, that's very, very helpful. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Wootton.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question, Mr. Chairman, to Councillor Hugo Marfleet. Councillor Marfleet, do you accept on page 23 that the accident rate for that location is really high? I mean, I looked at it, 4,000 vehicles a day compared to the A607, which has 10,000 vehicles a day, and 5 fatalities, 13 serious and 48 slight, and that doesn't include damage only, which are non-reportable. That is an exceptionally high accident rate for that road. Do you accept that?
Well, if you actually look at that data, there's 4,000 vehicles. If you go to the next page, it shows you the maps of where the accidents happen. And if you don't watch it, it's like taking a little snippet of information and then saying the A1 is terrible the whole length of the journey. and therefore we'll shut it down, where actually it's bad in one spot. The map, good clear indication. The speed, let's face it, the average mean speed is just about at 53. I would say it is about that, to be fair. The collision spots from 2012 to 2016, it really is coming out of Market Raisin to Ludford is without doubt the hot spot. The rest of the road is not bad, and there's always going to be a little accident somewhere. Best will in the world, we can wrap everybody up, but accidents do happen. The actual rest of the road is not really an issue. In fact, when you then go on it, I think what has been 2 accidents, of one which was a drink driving situation. So statistically, I don't think it's too bad. I think it really does. And I agree with Martin on this. I agree with the roadworks. I don't have an issue with the Safer Road Fund, because that money, we will spend it to qualify to make it safer. We have a duty. We have an issue here on the Market Raisin to Ludford stretch, where all the dots are. That incorporates Willingham Woods and this crossroads. That is really the prime focus. The rest of the road, perhaps a bit of hedge trimming in where junctions are, wouldn't go amiss. But the map says it all, and I think that's where the statistics are linked to that map from Market Raisin, not the whole length of road.
Councillor Martin, sorry, Chairman, would you accept, though, that by spending that funding, accident rates could be reduced and therefore saving people's lives and injuries?
But I haven't disagreed with that, because what you're talking about, though, at this stage, and this is what the paper says, is we're spending the 1.7, just over 1.7 million on 3.7k. That's to deal with making the carriageway safer. What I'm talking about is addressing these black spots by the actual visuals, the signage and the speed reduction. And that's why I say, I agree with Martin. The scheme can go ahead, but let's just re-look at this black spot and actually pick it up and say, right, the maps are saying that from Market Raisin to Ludford, we have got quite serious issues along there. And it might be that we make that whole 50 mile an hour zone. But let's put some options to the public. They're keen. That bit's not even in my area. It is when it's at Ludford and where the accident black spot is. But the rest of that is West Lindsey, predominantly. But that's the area to then look at separately to find what scheme is going to suit us best along the stretch. And then go to public consultation and get up. And we will make the guide to get it funded through the Safer Road Fund, because that is our primary thing. That is actually what we want to do, is spend the money on the road safety bit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hugo. Is that okay, Councillor Wilson?
Yes, thank you. Yes. My next speaker is Councillor Steve Kirk, although I've got Councillor Hill to speak as well.
Okay, Councillor Kirk.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just want to get clarification from the leader, please. I believe he said that he was quite happy to sign off on all the repairs to the carriageway happening, which we know that improves safety, and then look again at the safety measures. I would, if that's the case, then I think that's perfectly reasonable and something that we should be able to move forward on. But I would also suggest that we look at, as Councillor Offley suggests, some local measures rather than blanket measures. I'm one of these lucky people who get to travel from Skegness to Boston and back every day along the A52, where we have a plethora of different speed limits. It's gone down to 50, and the data does show it has reduced accidents. So anything we can do to improve the safety of our roads, I think we should be leaping at the opportunity of doing that. I think we owe it to the people who elected us. But secondly, I think we also need to think about the roads being a way where people and goods need to move freely and efficiently for our economy to work correctly. So if I'm correct in thinking what Councillor Hill said, then I think this is definitely the way forward. Get the repairs done and then look at the other physical safety things that we could do, such as speed limits and your suggestions as well, Councillor Marshall. So I'm just asking for clarification that what I thought I heard you to say was in fact what you said.
Over to you.
Yes, thank you. I'll speak slowly because I don't know about anybody else. There's been quite a bit of interference. So what I stated, the recommendation boldly states that this major restructuring work goes on the 631. So I think that everybody's agreed. I've not heard anybody disagree with that. So I think that is pretty uncontroversial. So, it might be the way forward if we have an assurance from Highways, Councillor Davis or others that the road safety element of it and, speed limits or a speed reduction goes through the normal consultation process, which is through scrutiny and all the rest of it. If they're able to give the committee that assurance with the proviso that obviously we do need to be seen to be spending money on road safety there, I think that hopefully would reassure the committee. But I think we just need that assurance that before any road safety partnerships issues are put in place, measures are put in place, it will go through the usual process which we do for every other speed limit or road safety issue. So
Okay.
it's as simple as that.
I'm going to subcontract out a second response to Councillor Davis. Would you like to comment, please?
Thank you. Yeah, all speed limit reductions have to go through planning and regs as normal. I wasn't aware that anybody was suggesting on this scheme that we would do it any other way, but Paul Little might be able to clarify. I think the report makes direct reference to the scrutiny process, and that's how we do speed limits. They go to committee. There's I believe it's a 13-week consultation period, and then the opportunity for local member and adjoining members to speak, and the planning and regs committee go through it and discuss at length, as they have done with all other speed limit changes, certainly as long as I've been in post.
Sure, I agree with you, Councillor Davis, honestly. But that's describing the process. I think that Councillor Hill was talking about an assurance.
And I can give him that assurance that we will follow the process, yes.
Thank you.
But I think what I just need to clarify that for the committee's benefit, it will be, normally, this is saying there are particular proposals there which are being mooted, but normally there is, I haven't been on highway scrutiny for many years, but normally there's an identification of the issue and some options put forward. So I'm just saying, rather than just one particular proposals put forward, is there an opportunity to look at others that the likes of Councillor Marfley might want to put forward? It may be they're rejected, but that's where I think we need the clarification.
The Highway Scrutiny Committee don't normally look at schemes like this. There's no reason they couldn't do if we felt it was necessary in this instance. The speed limit component would go to planning and regs, not to highways. The only thing is, in order to secure the funding, we'd have to satisfy the Department for Transport's crash plan software platform, which decides whether or not a particular solution is a reasonable safety measure or not. We could absolutely decide to do it another way, but we wouldn't necessarily receive all the funding if that was the case. But we can certainly take some time.
I'm assuming because it's in the paper that we do qualify for that.
Providing we implement particular measures, so they assign a scoring system based on so many points for surfacing, so many points for speed limits. If we veer off that menu, as it were, if you bear with me, and choose other solutions, they may not qualify for funding from the Department of Transport's Safer Roads Fund for that. They're quite specific in what they want to see.
No, to clarify there, no, we have had written assurance from Paul Little that in this particular instance they would not withdraw the funding.
withdrawing the funding for the resurfacing, I think the extra things would need to tick their boxes, but we'll have to see.
Okay.
Well, no, that's not the advice I've had from Paul Little. So, but I think the issue is we just need to make sure. But what I'm trying to get at is that there seems to be some unrest about the particular proposals being put forward. So, as long as there is a sort of an open mind, I take the point about that some of it might then mess up the qualification for speed limits and all the rest of it. But I just think if there is some local concern that there should be an open mind about at least trying to address that.
Can I make a proposal then, just that may satisfy this? If we were to take
hang on, there aren't proposals about yet at this stage. So, more questions to come to the three of you. Who's next, Ray?
Yeah, Chairman, I've got Paul Little waiting to speak.
Right.
Apologies, I lost connection earlier, but yes, if I can come in now and sort of add to the discussion in terms of going back to what the purpose of the Safer Roads Fund is. And the fund was given to us by the DFT to carry out specific measures. It's additional funding over and above our normal road safety funding. If we wish to look at accident collision hotspots, we should be using our normal allocation to look at that. The Safer Roads Fund is to build in engineering solutions to routes. It's about making safer routes. And if I can sort of use an analogy, they've given us the money to paint our house. If we want to spend it on the garden, it's probably quite legitimate that they don't give us the funding. What they've said is that if the speed limit goes through the democratic process, and we were ready to go out to consultation in February, the consultation was ready, but it was held back. And then, like we said, COVID got in the way. If the speed limit goes through the process and isn't approved, that will not stop the funding, because that's a process. If on principle we don't like speed cameras and decide not to install them, that is a different issue altogether. So we need to remember what the fund's for. And the fund's there as additional funding. And I keep coming back to that point, but we seem to be getting crossed between our additional funding and our original funding. So, like I say, the initial plan was to go out to consultation first on the speed limit, and it got held up, and it's ready to go now. It can go following this meeting, the consultation can go out on the speed limit. But in terms of the other actions, for speed cameras, for example, speed cameras are put up under authority of the police. So it's their enforcement action, but the funding's come through the Safer Roads. So all these parts of the bigger jigsaw, it comes as a package. So we need to justify why we don't want, and if we can, the DFT will be receptive. But if we're just doing it on principle, it may not be as receptive.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Councillor Wotton, next speaker.
Chairman, I've got no more members of the board to speak. Question to speak.
Okay, so that brings an end to stages 3 and 4, question and answer. We now move on to step 5, where members of the board debate. In other words, argue whether or not the item under discussion, and having heard the reasons for the call-in being made and heard the explanations as to why the decision was made, whether we take one of two choices. One is to support the call-in, and the second one is to confirm the decision already taken. So this is a debate now for members of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board. Okay. Speakers.
Chairman, I will start this. No, I've got no speakers at all at the moment.
Okay.
Sorry, apologies, Chairman. Councillor Jackie Brockwell has just come in.
Sorry, shall I just follow the Vice Chairman, because I think he was going to speak, Chairman?
Indeed.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I mean, I've looked at these papers thoroughly. I'm more interested in the accident rate, I think, which gives you the evidence that we need to continue with this planned action to improve this stretch of road. And I really appreciate Hugo's concerns and also his salient points which he's raised about accident black spots at a particular junction. But I think the evidence outweighs his concerns. I therefore would approve the scheme.
Okay, thank you. Jackie.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I feel similarly, but I have to say I'm a little bit worried about the idea that there seems to be confusion about this. So we know what the scheme is. We know that the scheme is separate funding. But I think from what I was reading, until this was all explained, I certainly had some confusion myself, as though some of it was being left out. And I wonder if in a future scheme, maybe these members' concerns could be put in. I'm not sure at what point Councillor Murphy raised it, but I think they are very, very valid. And I wonder, would it be possible to ask the leader what type of assurance he can offer us? Is that not appropriate?
We had the chance to do that.
Okay,
and I think we've heard some pretty clear statements from both Councillor Hill and Davis.
Okay, yes.
And I think decisions will be taken not necessarily in this meeting, but outside of this meeting.
Okay, that's fair enough, Chairman. Thank you very much then, yes. Okay, that's all, thank you.
Next speaker, Chairman, I've got is Councillor Rob Kendrick.
Fine. Rob, your turn.
Thank you, Chairman. Listening to the question and answer session, the thing that concerns me, if this were to be delayed, it's another delay that on our roads that we could do without. It just strikes me that we need to get moving on this, really. I can understand where Councillor Murphy's coming from, and he obviously knows that road intimately. I've probably only travelled it very rarely at all, if at all. So I can see where he's coming from, but it just strikes me that, you know, things can get delayed, and I just think that doesn't achieve much at all. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob.
Chairman, I've got no more board members requesting to speak, but I've got a request from Councillor Martin Hill.
Okay, I'll just check again. Anybody else want to speak?
I think Angela Newton's got a hand up, Rob.
Sorry, again.
Angela Newton, I've got her hand up. I don't know if she's with us.
I had raised my hand.
Lovely. Angela, over to you.
Sorry, Councillor Wharton, but I had raised my hand. Well, I think we should always take account of what the local member says. We did recently at Crowland, and we usually do. And I think it's really bad that's been lack of consultation in the early days. And I know it does happen. I've had it in my patch, and it's not good. And you get a lot of resentment, and it causes aggravation at meetings. And I think clearly this scheme does need to go ahead. The road needs to be made safer. But at the same time, it doesn't need to be done with undue haste so that locals are ignored. And I think we soon need to learn some lessons here. I don't know if it's a department thing or what it is, but we do need to take account of what local people say. And as long as we do take account of what Martin said about speed and some of the safety issues, I'll be relaxed about it. But I do think we mustn't ignore local members again. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else apart from Councillor Hill?
Rob, can I just come in?
Sorry, who's? I'm not sure who. Sorry. Who wants to speak?
I just wanted to say, well.
Sorry, Hugo, hang on. The reason I'm saying just hang on is that because you're not a member of the board at the moment, neither is Councillor Hill. And I just wanted to be clear about members of the board who can vote. We can debate the matter. Okay. Is there anybody else? Members of the board?
I've got Councillor Steve Kirk.
Councillor Kirk.
Thank you very much. I remember Councillor Murphy starting by saying he believed the cart had been put before the horse, that the speed measures and the road improvements weren't going hand in hand. We've now heard clarification from the leader and the portfolio holder that the road repairs will go ahead, and then there'll be consultation on the works around the additional works around speed, accepting that the road repairs will will certainly add to the road safety, won't they? So if that is the case, then I wonder if we actually need to continue much further, because that was a concern I believe the Councillor Marfleet had and the reason for the calling, because he thought it was working the other way around. But if all those speed recommendations that are in the document are going out to consultation, as they should do and as was stated they will do, then I can't see a problem with agreeing to let the scheme go ahead.
Okay. Right, there are two points that I want to raise if nobody else wants to speak as members of the committee. The first is that we have two choices, as I said earlier. The first is to support the recommendation that was agreed, as it were, the decision that was agreed by Councillor Hill. The second is to accept the call-in, and which negates that effectively. I think that this meeting, if left only to that, would be somehow unsatisfactory. I think that the important issue is the question of the assurance about the point in 1.7 of the paper on page 12, where it says, in addition to resurfacing the stretch of A631, the Lincolnshire Road Safety Partnership will also be looking at lowering, it also only says we'll be looking at lowering speed limit, installing average speed cameras, and installing reactive speed signs later in the year. I think with a pretty sound assurance from Councillor Hill, the normal processes of the council will be gone through with the aim of responding to the public in order to deliver those sort of improvements. I think Councillor Martha was indicating acceptance of those. So what I would like both of them to say in advance of us taking the decision and voting is to confirm that my reading of this is correct. Councillor Hill, will you go first?
Yes, I'll go first. Yes, that is correct. I mean, I think just to be even more helpful, I'm assuming, and hopefully Councillor Marfleet will clarify this, that he has no I'm just referring back to Paul Little's expert advice. I'm assuming Councillor Marfleet has no objection to the average speed cameras to enforce whatever speed limit is going to be provided there. And if that was the case, that would be further helpful. But true, yeah, the scheme should go ahead, I think, and obviously that would then allow the usual process for consultation, in the light that the consultation is not actually forcing a decision in terms of a particular solution to the road safety issues. So if Councillor Marfleet has no issue with it,
and then we'll move to the vote.
Yeah, thank you.
Over to you, Hugo.
Okay. No, I agree. My view is let's get on with the scheme. Let's just get a couple of options put to the public on the road safety element. It doesn't need to go through scrutiny. It can be designed up, 2 options put to the public, and can even come back to the leader to agree it off. I think we've spoken enough about it. We've raised all the points. It was just really the whole thing of the safety element wasn't very clear. And what we're saying now is let's just go back, look at it, look at the options, look at the legislation, and come out with some plans to go forward. And I agree to get on with resurfacing the road.
Thank you. Thanks, both of you. Okay, I think that's the end of step 5. Step 6 is decision-making time. No more speakers. I'm concluding the debate. Members of the board can now vote to determine whether or not we wish to refer the decision back to Councillor Hill or to confirm the decision. So can I hand over to, is it Emily or Nigel, to read out the names of the members that can attend? Just as a small reminder, added members are in attendance, and thank you for attending. Hope you found our debate useful. Added members cannot vote on this call-in because it's not an education matter.
So before we do that, Rob, can I just ask for clarification? A vote for, is that a vote for the call-in or a vote for the decision that was made by the leader?
We will vote for upholding the leader's decision and vote against objecting to the decision and referring it back to the leader. Is that okay?
Yeah, are we all clear?
Yep.
Yeah.
For means supporting the decision, against it's the opposite. Okay, Councillor Adams, I think goes first.
I don't believe he's present, Chairman.
Okay, sorry, I'm leaving it to you, Emily.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Brockway,
4.
Councillor Kendrick,
4.
Councillor Kirk,
4.
Councillor Newton,
4.
Councillor Parker,
4.
Councillor Pepper,
4.
Councillor Strangle,
4.
and Councillor Wotton.
4.
Thank you. That's carried to uphold the leader's decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Thank you. That's the conclusion of the meeting. We've made a decision, and we know what the outcome is in practical terms. We think that we've set the ball rolling for things happening in the future. Thanks to everyone for attending. That's it. Leave the meeting, use the red phone. That's it. Thank you for attending.